I will end up, I'd like to share some recommendations and references that people can take home and do more research on. So like you mentioned, I'm the manager at World Central Kitchen. Previously, I was a technology consultant at Accenture, and even though my background is environmental engineering, I then specialized in management of IT and data visualization. So now talking a little bit about World Central Kitchen. It was founded, as you may know, in 2010 by Chef Jose Andres. And our mission is to use the power of food to support communities in time of crisis and beyond. And some of our, as any nonprofit, there's multiple teams that we work with, such as, people that manage donors, finance, etc. But to simplify a little bit, some of our main operations are disaster relief focused, which is the active team that you usually see in the news, on social media, people that collaborate with other teams and deploy to help people in need. But we also have recovery work ongoing in between seasons of disaster or crisis, and more long-term efforts, such as the one in Haiti, the École de Chef, which is part of the resilience effort. So since 2010, and with the increasing sets of data and teams, as you can imagine, the need of proper data management and visualization to tell a good story about what we do became crucial. And you see here, I am highlighting the first team, the disaster relief, just because for the purpose of today, when I talk about specific practices and tools that we use, I'm mainly focused on that team. Just because there's many other systems that we use. So if you have any questions at the end about those, please let me know if I haven't mentioned them. So starting with the data management piece, one of the main important aspects of proper data management for us is being able to aggregate data, to integrate it, but also, of course, to trust it. So starting with data aggregation, when I joined World Central Kitchen, it was very important to be able to put together data that it's usually captured in the siloed folders, files, and to be able to aggregate it. And we're talking sometimes about data related to the same project or a disaster mission. One data set may have information about food, others about restaurants. So being able to find a way of capturing that data that will then allow us to aggregate and connect those data sets for detailed reports is very important. Another very important aspect is being able to map that data and aggregate it or group it geographically. As you know, our missions are now also internationally focused, so it's very important to see where our teams are, what is our impact, and showing a good story with detailed maps is something that that data management allows us to do. And lastly, analyzing by categories. And by that, I mean, sometimes we want to discover additional insights about the communities we serve, the specific projects that we do. Sometimes we group them by types, by locations. Having the ability to bring the data together and then group it to see exactly which communities we serve best, where our area of opportunities, it's something that we keep working on. So in terms of tools and techniques for this, what I've noticed that people usually need is a proper tabular data entry format or a data entry form. if you do not, and I mentioned the tabular data entry, because sometimes people use at the most basic level an Excel sheet or a Google sheet, but because there's not a lot of data entry control or structure, you may end up documenting information in different ways. And when that happens, it's very hard to aggregate the data, to simply group it together. So making sure that everyone, regardless of the project they are working on, the location they are in, documents the data in the same way, in the same format, it's going to save you a lot of time and cleanup process. Data dictionary is also something that we use a lot. Every team is recommended to have one. And sometimes there's softwares that create those based on the data that you upload, but just an Excel sheet will do. And usually it can be something as simple as the main fields that you usually document about your community work, about your school projects, and what those fields mean, just to give some context about your data. But sometimes it can also be more detailed, and that's something that we do. We provide the definition, the format that data should be captured, especially when you do not have a data entry tool and you rely on Excel sheet. It's very important to be clear how data should be entered in what format, if it can be null or not, if it's geographic data, etc. And some of the tools for the relief team specifically, we use Airtable, which is a very user-friendly tool and allows relational data, and that's very important, so we can extract then and create reports. But we also use Google Sheets and some other tools depending on the team. In terms of data aggregation, we leverage Postgres, which is a data management tool that allows us to see the data and run queries. And we also use Tableau Prep. So as previously mentioned, Tableau Prep has a very strong suite of the dashboard design, but also preparation and data management. These are some of the tools that we use in order to ingest the data and then aggregate it. Now, for data integration, it's kind of similar as the data aggregation piece. Again, it's very important to join multiple data sources on the same project. And sometimes when I'm talking about this is that it's important to, when in your data management practice, to make sure that your data, beyond having the same structure and format, that your data sets have also a unique ID, like a record ID or a project ID, that will allow you to integrate multiple sources of data. And we are also talking about integrating data from different systems, meaning sometimes you want information not only about your project and your field operation, like in our case, how many meals we served during the hurricane, but also information regarding donations and finance progress, all related to the same project or for multiple projects. So in order for that to be done, you will definitely need a unique ID that is going to link all those systems together. And future terms, this is also useful if you want to build your own data house, warehouse, where each team has its own database that we can then integrate together if the data is structured accordingly. And also when we talk about data integration, we're also talking about using APIs and leveraging external open data sources. But for that to work, you will definitely need to explore the structure of the data that you need to have it in, and the kind of unique IDs that you will need in order to connect. And for tools and techniques, I'm listing here entity relationship diagram. That is a very basic diagram that usually will list the entities. So as an example, during the project, we may have list of restaurants we work with, list of volunteers, a table with meals. So having all those as a list of tables to see exactly what kind of entities we're dealing with, but also what kind of fields or information we have about that entity is very important when it comes the time to integrate, because it's going to show you clearly each team what kind of information is managing, and also what kind of details they have about every entity. And also the diagram will have those primary and foreign keys, they are known, that will allow you to join those multiple data sources. Now, another recommendation is to have business process flows diagrams, as well as diagrams that show your enterprise architecture, or a digital stack diagram. This is useful so you can see the hierarchy of your data and its flow, and also to do a gap analysis. Something that we do when we want to improve things, we take a look at these diagrams to see if we have what we need in-house, or if there's something that is missing. So that's when we use that digital stack diagram to see how we can improve it, and what we need to add in order to complete an integration across multiple systems. I mentioned the geolocation piece. That is something that we do quite a bit. So when it comes to integrating that, we use geographic administrative layers that can be found online, and I'm actually including that as a reference. And we also use QGIS in order to integrate and combine multiple maps when we want to report on missions that occur in multiple locations. And sometimes if you're capturing data in tools that are not easily available, to connect Tableau to them, or some other kind of visualization tools, there are these data extraction and integration tools, such as syncing that I have here in blue, but there's also Zapier and Fivetran. So what they do, they will use APIs or some other ways of connecting to your data, and put that in a location such as a cloud location in a database, where you can go in and manage your data and run queries off of it. And then finally, Tableau Prep is also good for data integration. And here I'm talking more about when you have data in multiple locations, probably you may not have a data warehouse just yet. So you need a tool that can access different systems such as Salesforce, QuickBooks, Sage, and Tableau Prep, Trifacta, Alteryx. They usually have connectivity to all those tools. So they allow you to do joins, union calculation, aggregate, clean up your data to create that massive data source that you may need for reporting. And finally, but very important, of course, is that be able to trust our data and also to discover it and have context on it. We use Tableau Data Management for our reports, and that helps us see what kind of data sources each report is connected to, and who's the owner of the data source, and also if there's any issues with it. And they also provide some kind of data dictionary capability. And we also leverage these tools such as Tableau Prep again, or Trifacta. It's another good recommendation, just because they are able to schedule data preparations and cleanup and automate them. So as you ingest more and more data, they will follow your business rules, and they will clean up your data to make sure that your information is of the highest quality. Now, for data visualization specifically, we kept it more simple here because it kind of overlaps as well with data management. And why is it important? So as you can imagine, we want to offer a good story to our followers, to our stakeholders, supporters. But of course, it's also super crucial to be able to track progress easily while we are out there distributing full or collaborating with other teams. And we use Tableau to create the individual reports, or for one specific hurricane, let's say, or aggregate for all hurricanes or for all disasters during the year. We may also use it to integrate our Airtable data with Salesforce for a more complete report. We also, like I mentioned, we want to be able to communicate our impact to our stakeholders and align our reports to their needs, to their specific questions. And also something that we do quite a bit is enhance collaborations with other agencies, especially when they have an interest in our progress and they want to support us. Creating a good visual dashboard and having a good visualization tool really helps to showcase your hard work and tell a story and keep collaborating with those agencies. And now that we are improving our data management practices and we are integrating new tools that help us clean our data, restructure it, we want to use that information to be able to plan for future missions. And in line with that, to also improve our operations. So we create end of operations reports. We can look at our progress, if there were any blockers, any mistakes, and then we can look historically and see how we can plan for future events, and sometimes even by specific events by types. So like I said, that's when we want to be able to aggregate, but also group and categorize our data. So tools and techniques, here I wanted to share with you how we approach data visualization when developing dashboards. So we use dashboard checklists. I have a few points in the next slides. Dashboard checklists and data visualization vocabularies to conduct whiteboarding sessions and kind of like brainstorming and think about the requirements that our dashboards need to meet. We also assess the data once we identify what data we need. We look at its quality and see if there's any gaps in the data to identify the tools that we need to prepare the data, and also what to keep an eye on when testing. And like I was mentioning earlier, we may also use data integration tools. If the data I need is not easily accessible, then I use all these tools, syncing, like I said, to migrate the data from Airtable to Postgres. Then in Postgres, I may do some initial data transformation, and I create my main tables. Tableau prep, it's really good for additional data cleanup that sometimes you may not be able to do through your queries. And then finally, we use Tableau Desktop or even Tableau Online to design the dashboards, to start the sketching, and also to incorporate feedback and reiterate the design. And lastly, sometimes we want data to be more granular, or the reports. So instead of just showing information at state level, for example, in the United States, you may want to go all the way down to a track or a block level. Then you need to make sure that you have the data in the right format to leverage external information, such as sometimes Google Maps or the US Census shapefiles templates that will allow you to combine your data with theirs and see your impact at the more granular level. And of course, again, emphasis on documenting your data sources, the location, and their meaning to be able to track them. And also, when you're not around, to communicate with other people what the data means and what the report conveys. Now, I won't go over every point here. I try to highlight some of these, but I did want to share this with you because I think it's very useful when trying to improve our data management practice to have some kind of guidelines. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to start. So while you don't have to do this in a specific order, it is recommended to start with a gap analysis, like I was mentioning. Look at your available resources in-house, look at your workforce, programs, softwares, existing data to see if based on what your goals are, do you need new skills? Do you need to train your people? Do you need to acquire new tools, or what you have is more than enough to achieve your goals? Also, when you select the the new tools to add to your digital stack or improve it, before you do that, also keep in mind what are the data collection procedures that you may follow. So what's the type of data that you plan on capturing and managing, from where, in what way, and the very important, what defines a good quality, a good data quality, because you have to think if the tool allows you to enforce some data entry controls to make sure that they follow the rules that you may document in a data dictionary. Also, will the data be in such a structure that you can rely on it and share it with other external partners? And also super important, if you can use it in a reporting format. Sometimes there's data that you capture in the wrong format if you do not have a template, like I was saying, and it may require additional work when it comes to creating a dashboard. Also, think about the volume and velocity of your data. You may start with a small amount, but then as your operation increases, the data set will also increase. So you have to consider the tools that you have, or you consider including, can manage all that data. And in terms of dashboards, an important aspect is, do you need your data to be live? Do you just need a daily refresh? Because that also matters. Not all tools will allow your data to refresh immediately. Of course, consider about storage and organization practices. Where do you store it? What are your naming conventions in the kind of data set that you need to create? And of course, have a backup plan. Going back to data transformation, sometimes if you have a good data entry tool and rules and responsibilities in place, you may not need them, but usually you will need at least a simple tool that allow you to clean, aggregate, and integrate your data for more rich reports. And always keep in mind data security and integrity if your tools provide that, and define sensitive information in how you track ownership and consent. And of course, emphasis on documenting your data sets in the data that you manage through dictionaries and catalogs. For data visualization, and when you create there's usually two approaches. You can do, this would be a checklist for the dashboard in general. It's best practice to start by identifying your audience and the goal. How is the dashboard going to be used? By when, and by when do you need to deliver? Just because sometimes people have specific requirements in mind that cannot be all completed within that time frame. So you may need to do several iterations. Excuse me. And something that I like to do a lot during those whiteboarding and brainstorming sessions, I usually ask people to think about the main questions that they want the dashboard to answer. What is the action they want to take based on that answer, and then the end result. That's going to help them think a little bit more through what they want, and it's going to help the designer, the data scientist, think about what information they need and what kind of design they have the opportunity to create. And important, of course, details such as filters and nodes, and the kind of in the workforce, the resources available to help you put this together in terms of roles and responsibilities. And lastly, when we're talking about chart-specific requirements, some of the best approaches to ask for a description of the chart. Once you identified what you want to create, describe the chart, identify the data fields that you need to put that together. Does it need any cleanup or calculations, formatting, and formatting in terms of colors? How should I highlight this? And again, some filters may be chart specific, and the data sets that is most up to date to create that chart. And if it's not in the best state and the highest quality, you will need to ask for help to prepare that data. And just for reference, some best practices when designing, keep it simple while you do your initial design, using gray colors or black, and then use color once you know what's your action plan, and mostly to highlight areas of interest. Leverage white space and make sure that the charts are grouped by topics and in a logical order. And finally, I just wanted to share some additional references. For data management, the DAMA book of data management is super important and very useful. And then the NIST, those are security standards that most people follow, and they're good guidelines to ensure your data is secure. And here I have Talent modes or segment time extenders. Those are some other data integration and preparation. Then when selecting your final tool, I recommend doing a market research diagram. And leveraging websites such as the Magic Quadrant. Those provide some really good insights on tools by categories. And I have here listed lastly, Tidy Data. It's a paper that I found recently that will give you an idea of the data structure that I was talking about, how to have it in a proper way, that everyone documents it in the same manner, and that it's ready for reporting. And for data visualization, I'm listing here the first bullet, a book that I really like for recommendation on charts, Makeover Monday. I think that was created by Tableau, and then Tableau Public, Lovalytics, and Playfair Data, and some of the website that I really like to use as reference for design inspiration, and I really recommend them. Then I mentioned at the beginning that I use data visualization vocabulary, and Financial Times has a publicly available one that is really good and groups charts by categories, and it's going to really help you identify what kind of charts do you need based on what you want to do, like compare things and more one dimension more than one dimensions to really make a good selection. Tableau Visual Analytics Guidebook is also a good reference. And then to enrich your dashboard, I really like using icons, and Flat Icon is a website that provides free images to really make your dashboards pop. And then the geographic information, the geographic administrative levels, those are also websites that you can extract geographic information from. And 508 accessibility. I did not mention this earlier, but it's best practice to also keep accessibility in mind. And you can also find public information on how to make your dashboards, especially in terms of colors and font size, to be accessible to people, especially those who are colorblind. And lastly, besides Tableau, there's also some other tools that can be used for data visualization, such as Click, Power BI, and Airtables has some really basic capabilities, and even Salesforce. So this is one of the references that I was talking about. You can find it online as well on examples of charts and what you can do with them. And this is like the magic quadrant. This focuses on data integration tools to help you identify which one is best for you by doing a checklist and comparing against each other. So that was it. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Adina. We've already gotten feedback thanking you for the wealth of resources that you shared during this short session. And so I'm sure that it will be beneficial to our participants. I do have a question for you. Recognizing that our participants here work at different organizations who may be at different phases of their data management and data visualization processes, what suggestions do you have for those of us who may have smaller budgets? We know that, you gave us a variety of tools that we, have the potential to use, but how do you factor that into a lack of resources?
Sure. So I would select a tool that can do multiple things. Well, not at once, but I was mentioning Airtable allows you to capture data, to manage it, and also has some basic charts capability and dashboards. So, in terms of a software that makes things easier and covers multiple aspects. And there's also definitely, when you make that market research and comparison, price is always part of my comparison. So always include that to see which one gives you the most for the price that you pay. So that return of investment analysis. Many people use